So we will go through chapters 5 through 11 of A Long Walk to Water. And here we have use imagery to discuss Naya's daily experience. And imagery is just what you can see, smell, hear, feel. Your five senses, taste too. The reader can see the barren, I want to say, we could say the dried, or actually, I do want to use the word barren. Barren land. I didn't use the right barren. Barren would mean dry, nothing is there. Desolate. We'll say desolate. That's a good one. We'll say desolate. Nothing there. That would mean like not very habitable, not very fit for human life. It's going to be difficult. And I have it dried, so that's what we can see. The reader can imagine what the clay feels like. That's our touch. As the writer writes, she kept digging, scooping out handfuls. The reader can see Naya struggling to fill the water. We could also do taste here. The reader can imagine what drinking the muddy water would taste like. Not refreshing. Man versus nature conflict. Now we get into Salva's story. Of course, Salva's is a man versus nature, character versus nature. They all got stung by the bees. That would be following up from last time. So I could say Salva experiences a character versus nature conflict because he and his group are stung by bees while trying to eat the honey from a hive. That is definitely not good. And then we have a conflict, another conflict. Now, the conflict with the bees, character versus nature, did not work out very well. The bees attacked them when they were sleeping. Uh, they were moving the hive. The bees woke up and were not happy to discover their home taken away. That's your conflict there, right? Now, all around him, people are looking with great satisfaction, except somebody who got stung on the tongue. That's very bad. And then you could say that this shows Salva's characterization of being sympathetic to other people, which is obviously good. Now, the group is getting bigger because more people are walking with them each day. So now, at this point, Salva's walking and he steps on someone. He's walking around this fire and steps on a person. And they say, ouch, but it's a boy. He says, that was my hand you stepped on. So this is a conflict, character versus character. Salva steps on someone and they have words, right? This is their dialogue. He's upset with him. Then we find out that's Mariel, and Mariel is also without his family, orphaned by this war. And we could say the conflict was resolved positively, because not every conflict ends, um, badly. So you could say Salva has a character versus character conflict when he steps on another boy by accident while walking around the group's fire at night. The boy, Mariel, ends up forgiving Salva and they form a friendship. So we could say this conflict was resolved in a positive way. And then we have the ending here that's going to leave us with Salva coming along and hearing one morning he woke up. He rubbed his eyes and they were going to start walking again, but he hears Salva. His mouth turns open. So wait, we would wonder who this is. This would be a cliffhanger. And we could know that whoever, how would this sentence change if Linda Sue Park replaced the word amazement? So if she replaced the word with fell open in terror, fell open in shock or dismay. Dismay would mean you're upset about something. Because his mouth opens in amazement, we can assume that it is someone good here that is coming. So we could say the mood was excited, uplifting, and then we find out it was his uncle. So we go into chapter 6 We can characterize my Naya here obviously as being mature for her age. She notices her mother's fear. We could say that she's intuitive. Intuitive, Naya can be characterized as mature and intuitive. Intuitive means that someone is able to read a situation or other people very well. This normally isn't a character trait of children, but Naya's experience in life makes her lack a typical childhood, we could say. How is Salva? Now we get into the uncle. All right, so finally some good news for Salva here. Salva's uncle is there. Now, Salva's uncle, Uncle Jewer, was the youngest brother of Salva's father. Salva hadn't seen him in 2 years because he had been in the army. So Salva's uncle was fighting against either the government or he was with the government and then he deserted because he didn't want to be a part of the army and fighting for the north in northern Sudan. So we're not exactly sure, but you could say that he is characterized as protecting because he immediately says he's going to look after Salva. And we learned that the uncle had just joined, but that's how many people are there that Salva didn't even notice his uncle was there. And his uncle had a gun, and his uncle has army experience. So Salva immediately notices that his uncle is kind of this leader, right? And when we say, what kind of leader is he? He ends up killing a young antelope, a topi. And we could say he's going to share this food here. He was too busy. Even though the topi was a small one, there was more than enough meat. Ooh, he ends up getting ill. But we could say about Salva's uncle that he's respected, fair, and honest. Because just because he does have this gun, he could use it to be, a menace to the group. But he does it in a honorable way. So you could say Salva's uncle, I forgot his name. I want to put it in there. His uncle was Uncle Jewer. Salva's uncle Jewer is can be characterized as a kind, caring, honest protector of Salva. And we can say he's hunting, he tells him he's going to watch him, he's caring for him. Those could all be some evidence. He's cheerful, he tells him. The evidence from the text could be that he says it. But then if we are going to believe him, we can see that he's hunting for the group and cooking for the group and leading the group, right? So then we have what conflict greatly affects Salva at the end of chapter 6. How could the reader describe the mood of chapter 6 for Salva and the group? So we get some foreshadowing when we know that he's talking with the men about the seriousness of the journey. We know that there was no water anywhere. That is obviously really bad. And then he did not wake until he felt Uncle shaking his shoulder. As he opened his eyes, wailing, someone was crying. I'm sorry, Salva, your friend, Mariel. He should be nearby. I don't remember if he slept yet. I was so tired. I am sorry. So this definitely changes the mood of the story to very, very sad. But if we were to know that they're traveling through the jungle, well, they're traveling through the savannah. It's technically not the jungle, but it would be there's wildlife obviously there. So when we go to chapter 7, the clues from chapter 6 that foreshadowed Mariel's fate would be when they were talking about where they were walking. They were walking through a specific salva. He had said, let's see. So this would be the foreshadowing of what ended up happening. And I didn't want to give it away. So we would put here foreshadowing that they were in the land of the lions, the Atuat. And this would be like where all of the lions were. And then Mariel would have been like little and obviously a little bit away from the group. So that's would have been why they did that. And then when we have, so that would be your answer for chapter 7. We could say chapter 6 discussed where the group was in terms of the geography of the land. The group was walking through an area of the savannah that was known to have a large lion population. And so for this one, we would also put, so for Naya, sorry. Naya is, their conflict is going to be the sister Akir is sick. So now they need to decide. For elderly and small children, the illness could be dangerous. Naya's uncle, the chief of the village, knew of a medical facility only a few walks away. So basically, their conflict is character versus self, trying to decide if Akir should stay at the camp and heal, or they take a journey that would be very long and treacherous for her, seeing as how she's sick. That would be our conflict. And I'll put that. Naya's family faces a character versus self conflict because the family members must decide whether or not to take young Akir to a clinic. The decision is difficult because the journey is long and Akir could become even more ill on the walk. You could say Naya's family also has a conflict with nature because illnesses are a natural occurrence. So the reader could state this is a character versus nature conflict. And then for Salva chapter 6, we know the clues were where they were in the savannah. And I spelled that wrong. And then when you say textual evidence, how does Salva's uncle help him? Well, he's really there for him, comforting him. The lion had been hungry enough. The few men, it was dark, and the lion could have easily crept close without being seen. And then obviously, Mariel is the smallest of the group. If it hadn't been with Uncle, he had been crazy with fear. So we could say he's just simply there, alleviating his fears, just being there for him. And then he informs them where they're going to be going, a desert and then into Ethiopia, because they need to cross this border into Ethiopia, would be another neighboring country, so that they can get to safety out of this war. So for this, we could say Salva's uncle continues to be a beacon of hope in Salva's life. He comforts him after the death of his friend and assures him that he will stay up, keeping watch for predators. So, Salva's uncle, characterized just all around a good guy. When we get to chapter 8, this would be obviously why does it worry Akir's mother? So, Akir, we can assume, is suffering from malnutrition. And when we say it's from not having food or even also access to the water. So you could put anything like her mother would obviously be nervous because she can't access clean water, and that is what Akir needs. So Naya's mother worries because the nurse informs her to provide clean drinking water to Akir in to assist with her recovery. However, there is no clean drinking water available where Naya and her family live. So that would just be a fancy way to say live. I would put reside. And then you would have the mangoes. And of course, so when we get down here, um, we're going the mangoes and the color orange. So mangoes are obviously orange on the inside. And here would be this. Oh, wait. Also, you could say because of Akira's age. Wait, if we went back, Naya also states how it is how it is impossible to convince her 5-year-old sister not to drink the dirty water from the pond because obviously she's thirsty and she's only 5, so she's not going to know. When we get into Salva's, now he's on this lake, and they're paddling for hours. They have to cross this lake to get to Ethiopia. Um, and he's coming up to, wait, not the fishermen, they're coming up to the Nile. The lake, it's like a big lake, but then it's filling from the Nile. So we have, oh, the uncle again. It appears here that Salva could tell not the uncle seemed to be the leader of the group, or they were afraid of his gun. That's kind of interesting. Why people are helpful to the uncle, and I guess it could show that how powerful the uncle is. That he does wield a lot of power with his rifle, but he doesn't use it to intimidate people, even though he kind of is here. He's giving him a piece of sugar cane other ways. And then this is where we get into our symbolism. So Salva here is recalling where he was never hungry in his old village with his family. And now he also brings up the mangoes with his dad on the bicycle and running to grab them. Earlier, it had talked about his mother's orange headscarf. Here we go. So the color orange and mangoes in general symbolize to Salva his home and his family. Then when we go on, as Salva make their final trip from the island to the other side of the Nile, what advice do the fishermen give and why? Well, here we have the fishermen are going abruptly into their tents, aka white mosquito nets. Not one fisherman stayed to talk or do anything else. It was almost as if they vanished at the same moment. Only a few minutes later, mosquitoes rose up from the water from the reeds everywhere. Huge dark clouds of them, their high pitched whine filling the air. Thousands, maybe millions of hungry mosquitoes massed so thickly that in one breath Salva could have ended up with a mouthful if he wasn't careful. The fishermen stayed in their tents the whole night long. They even dug channels from inside the nets just beyond them so they could urinate without having to leave their little tents. It didn't matter how often Salva swatted the mosquitoes or that one swat killed a dozen at a time. Every one he killed, it seemed that hundreds more would take its place. Their high singing whine constantly in his ears. Salva slapped and waved at them in frustration all night long. No one in the group got any sleep. So you could say this is just the elements. And what advice did the fishermen give to try to get out of the way? But obviously the group can't. There's really nothing else you could do. The fishermen, they can't give them their nets. I guess they tried. They're not really warning them that the mosquitoes were there because there wasn't anything they could do. Um, we can say that. Actually, we can say we would put in here. They warn them. This would be advice or warning. So they didn't warn them about the mosquitoes, but they did warn them to take plenty of water. We could say the fishermen the fishermen go into their mosquito net tents in the evening without a word, which signified the arrival of the arrival of a mosquito horde, the arrival of hordes of mosquitoes. When the following morning, after a sleepless night, the fishermen advise the group to take a lot of water for their next journey's stretch. A stretch just means the next part of your really giant, really long journey. So, and I spelled everyone wrong. There we go. Signified the arrival. So I wouldn't really call that advice because they couldn't have escaped it. And the water, you could say that was advice. What conflict does Salva face in chapter 9? Um, for here, though, wait, I do want to add villagers, men come to Naya's village and they're talking about water. That could be some foreshadowing right there. And now we have his conflict in the beginning of chapter 9. Well, we know that it's going to take 3 days and he has no shoes. So now he's walking barefoot through the sand, which is incredibly hot. The sun was relentless and eternal. That's an example of figurative language. Oops.